I would now like to introduce to you Rader Law Group's founder, board-certified attorney, Mr. Andrew Rader. A pioneer in the IVF legal space, Mr. Rader not only practices law, he has also reshaped it. Through his groundbreaking work, Florida became one of the first states to recognize emotional damages for the negligent destruction of embryos, setting a powerful precedent in reproductive health and reproductive justice. From empowering clients through IVF contract review to litigating, Mr. Radar's scope includes a unique regulatory perspective from having also co-owned a family medicine health center. The Florida Bar deems Mr. Radar to be in the top 1% of civil trial attorneys in the state, and he has served clients across Florida and New York for more than 30 years. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Rader.
Thank you so much. Can I move this? Wait, am I? Okay, that's fine. So I'm the lawyer. There's no way I'm going to be as much fun as Dr. Love. But I'm hoping that I can give you guys some information that will be useful to you. Okay. So good morning, everybody. And please take a deep breath and enjoy your time here. You've made it here today. You should be very proud of yourselves for getting here and for obtaining information. Whether you're just beginning your journey on IVF or you're knee-deep in the process, or you're gathering information for a loved one, you belong in this room, and I honor you for that. I'm also honored to be among the other distinguished speakers who are here at this conference, and I want to thank the Urban League for giving me the privilege of speaking today. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I work with individuals and families who are navigating the fertility challenges, especially when things don't go as planned. I've had the privilege of helping people protect their rights and their futures during what is the most emotional chapter in their lives. I began my career as a public defender in the Bronx, and I did that for 10 years. I am married. My wife is here somewhere, Meryl Rome. There she is. She's a board-certified forensic psychiatrist. I have two children. My daughter Hannah graduated University of Florida, is an aspiring writer and artist in Brooklyn. And my son Spencer is a West Point graduate and served in the Army and retired as a captain. I will tell you that my children are the joys of my life, and yours will be too. So how did I become involved in this sector? I am, by training, a personal injury attorney and medical malpractice attorney. But I had some clients who called me, and this is the story they told me. In 2018, they had 4 embryos harvested. 3 of those embryos were good, and 1 of them was non-viable. So they gave permission for the non-viable one to be destroyed. Pardon me. In 2022, when they went to implant the remaining 3 embryos, they found out that back in 2018, all 4 had been destroyed. Someone at the IVF clinic had mistakenly destroyed them all. There's nothing that I as an attorney can do to bring back those embryos or to give those parents the family they would have had. But there is something that I can do. And this is something that I did do. In Florida, the law is that you cannot recover emotional damages for the loss of property. So for example, if somebody crashes your car, you can get the value of the car, but you can't collect emotional damages for it. Also in Florida, embryos are considered property, like a car, and therefore you can't collect emotional damages for it. But I changed that. I convinced a judge to allow for emotional damages. I convinced a judge that the clinic had a sacred trust to these embryos, and that these parents had suffered horribly, and they should be able to recover from it. So that was the first in the state of Florida, and I'm very proud of it, as it set a powerful precedent to other families who unfortunately find themselves in the same situation. That's how I got involved. But I want to be very clear, this is an empowerment session. I'm not here to dissuade you from pursuing IVF or growing a family. But I do want to offer you some tools and the language so that you can make some informed choices as you go forward. So let's get started. So let's begin with governmental regulation of IVF. There is none. Who here is surprised to learn that in the United States, the government does not regulate IVF? Raise your hands. They don't regulate IVF. They don't regulate the clinics. They don't regulate any of it. It's shocking. It needs to change, and we're working on it. But that's the state of the law in Florida. And that is the state of the law nationally. But there are two organizations that do serve as warehouses of information. One of them is called SART, S-A-R-T. That is the Society for Assisted Reproductive Technologies. The second one is called ASRM, which is the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. These organizations offer guidelines to clinics, and they also allow clinics to upload information. But keep in mind, IVF clinics are permitted to operate without being a member of either of these organizations. They're doing incredible things medically, but the whole system is basically functioning without checks and balances. Checks and balances that, frankly, we all assumed they were in place. I assumed they were in place before I got involved in this. Show of hands, how many of you are surprised there are no strict national standards? Most of you. How many of you have heard of scary stories of embryos being mistakenly destroyed or implanted in the wrong person? I have those cases. But remember, I'm not here to discourage you from moving forward. IVF offers hope in the possibilities for families who once thought that parenthood was out of reach. But knowledge is power. So take out a pen and pencil, because we're going to discuss some questions that you need to ask the clinics and the doctors, and we'll put you in the driver's seat. Now, there is a goodie bag outside, and it contains one of these. Did you guys get one of these when you walked in? If you open it up, you'll see that you can take notes on the inside, and also I've laid out some of the questions that you should be asking. Needless to say, if you have any questions for me, my information is on there too. But here is some information and some questions that you should be asking the lab and the doctors in the clinic. And why the lab? Why the lab? How many of you have heard of Reprotech? Reprotech is an organization that houses your embryos, stores them in cryopreservation. So why the lab? Because a lab technician, not your doctor and not the clinic in all likelihood, will be grading, freezing, thawing, and prepping your embryos. You have every right to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, what protocols they have in place, and how errors are prevented. So here are some questions. I'm going to try to give you some practical information that you can use. Here is some information, and some questions that you should be asking. First, let's talk about questions that you should be asking the clinic. Are they registered with SART? Are they registered with the ASRM? We want a yes. We demand a yes. Members of these organizations tend to maintain better records. They tend to have better protocols in place. They tend to follow more ethical procedures and practices. Ask questions that help you break down the success rates you see on the clinic's website. Keep in mind, these are for-profit organizations and they want to sell you. But there are things that you can do to obtain good information. For example, when they say they advertise a 96% success rate, what does that really mean? But you can go to the SART website, and if they are a member, you can find what's called a simple clinical summary report. I know you can't see this, but this is available on the SART website for every clinic that is a member. And in here, you can find out live births per intended egg retrieval, live births per new patient, all kinds of information. So I encourage you to get this report and to look for it. By the way, if anybody after the speech wants to check out what this looks like, I'm happy to provide it. So you print out the report and ask your doctor about the percentages, and most importantly, ask about statistics for your age. That is the number one deciding factor on what is going to be a successful event. You want to make sure you get accurate statistics based on you, not based on the population in general. Ask about live birth rates, pregnancy rates, and implantation rates. Ask about percentages of embryos that reach days 5 and 6, which is the blastocyst stage, in their lab. A good lab should have a 50% or higher blastocyst rate. What's the average number of cycles before successful implantation? Of those, how many resulted in full-term pregnancies? If they aren't open to discussing these questions with you, that's a red flag. Questions about your doctor. Is your doctor board certified in reproductive endocrinology and infertility? Here's why you want to know that information. Somebody who is board certified in reproductive endocrinology and infertility is not only board certified in obstetrics, but they have gone through 3 additional years of training and a fellowship that specializes in hormonal disorders, fertility preservation, IVF, and other assisted reproductive technologies, reproductive surgery, and genetic testing and counseling. It is an additional and difficult criterion, and you want to make sure your doctor has it. Ask them how they customize treatments for their patients. No one wants to feel like there are no one-size-fits-all. Are there treatments tailored for a patient based on you and your medical history? If your needs change for treatment, are the doctors willing to be flexible and accommodate your needs? If you walk into a clinic and you see a sign that says this doctor has decided not to carry malpractice insurance, walk out. Like the rest of us, doctors need to be able to pay for their mistakes in the unfortunate and very improbable event that something goes wrong. Here's the last question, and this is probably the most important question. The next question that I'm going to discuss with you forces the clinic to consider your medical history, your age, your fertility factors, instead of treating you like a number. If the clinic doesn't respond well to the question I'm about to tell you, they may not be operating in an honest and ethical manner. This could help you to avoid unnecessary procedures and side effects. So what is that question? In what scenarios am I not a good candidate for IVF? In what scenarios should you be saying to me, I love you, but I can't help you? That is very important. It helps you set realistic expectations early on. It allows you to consider alternatives to IVF, like surrogacy and egg donation. And these are great options But no matter what types of treatments you choose, it's always best to consult with an attorney. Let's talk about the storage of embryos. Some of you may have heard about a case that happened in California where a cryopreservation lab lost its power. Thousands of embryos destroyed. That happens. So gather information about the storage of embryos and ask questions. You want to have a thorough understanding of what happens during the entire process in the short term and the long term. So let's look at in the guide in here for some of the questions that you want to ask about storage and handling. What are the policies and procedures that make embryos remain safe? The clinic should talk to you about alarm systems, secure labeling, daily quality checks to make sure that equipment doesn't malfunction. Is there a backup source of electricity in case of power loss? We live in Florida. There are hurricanes. We lose power. There is no requirement that an IVF cryopreservation lab have backup electricity. None. But a good one will. Ask about how embryos are identified and kept separated from others. You want to hear that the clinic uses electronic tracking, double witnessing, and barcodes. Let's talk about inviable embryos, because that happens. What happens if your embryos aren't viable? What happens if your life plans change? I have one word for you: consent. Your IVF clinic is legally obligated to provide you with cryopreservation consent form detailing exactly what happens in various scenarios. For example, what if you don't use them? What if you separate from your partner or one of you passes away? This is where it is essential to have an expert in the IVF space review your contract. Forms are often ambiguous and contain language that you find in your family in jeopardy. Let me give you an example of that I have right now. I have a surrogacy case where the egg was implanted, or the embryo was implanted in the wrong surrogate. Little did they know, there was a provision in the contract that required that if a lawsuit were to be brought, it had to be brought in Mexico City. Mexico City? Nobody was thinking about Mexico City. They signed the contract in Florida. But there it is. So a lawyer can help to advise you and review those forms for you. And let's face it, sometimes life throws you a curveball. Maybe your views have changed on how you would like to dispose of unused embryos. Instead of destroying them, you may want to give them to a company that can put them up for adoption. Maybe your frozen embryos, you've had a change of heart regarding who will be providing the sperm. Remember that if the clinic does anything without your consent, it's a major legal violation. When it comes to IVF, the financial conversation isn't just about budgeting and treatment cycles. It's also about making sure that your embryos are protected long after fertilization. Questions to ask about egg, sperm, and embryo storage. Most clinics charge an annual fee, but prices can vary. How are you billed? Monthly, annually, upfront? And what happens if you miss a payment? Is there a grace period if you miss a payment, or will the clinic discard them automatically? Is there a protocol put in place to try to reach you in multiple ways, text, email, phone calls, to alert you of a missed payment? Now, I've just spent a little time discussing questions that you should ask your IVF clinic and lab, but there's another resource that you should and have an easy opportunity to go to at this expo, at a support group. Ask questions. Ask questions of the person sitting next to you in the waiting room. Maybe they've gone through something similar to what you're experiencing. And most importantly, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. You deserve to feel safe and supported. Also, let's be honest about the realities people face. Access to care is not equal. Some communities, especially Black women, LGBTQ plus individuals, and single parents, may face greater challenges navigating the system. And those challenges can be legal, financial, and emotional. So it's important to understand your rights, because knowing your rights helps protect your dream. Now, if you look in that little goodie bag, if you don't have it yet, you'll see the legal guide. You can find my website in there if you want to chat. But there's also a little ice pack in there so that it can help to soothe the discomfort from injections and bruises, and maybe someday you can put it on your little one's head when they bump their head in the playground. So the IVF journey is not medical only. It's legal, emotional, financial, and deeply personal. I'm here to be your resource. Come find me during the break. I'd love to chat, answer questions, or even just hear your story. Thank you so much.